Welcome to Pardon My Hunch, the show about the real decisions we make in business and life and the gut instincts that we trust or wish we hadn't ignored. As always, this show is brought to you by the Vibe Method, which is a process we use and teach to help innovators and marketers nail a unique customer story and prove it will sell before they ever build or scale. To find out more about how we can help you nail a killer vibe before you go live, you can go to gohunch.com. Now let's get on with the show. Today we have Mike Tigani, who is the director of marketing for King and Prince Seafood. Specifically, we just were having a great conversation about this, managing the food away from home arm of the company because the consumer side is Gordon Seafood, which I'm sure people will recognize. But you come from a long background of both R&D and marketing, and a lot of food science, a lot of food industry stuff. And we were just chatting about, gosh, the lack of data you have when you're selling to businesses, and that makes it, it's almost like you have to like lean on your instincts, right? Which is what we're all about. um in this show, that's for sure. I was just saying, I'm a marketing researcher who is trying to push people to not forget their instincts. But with that, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome, Terry. Thank you for having me. And like you said, I mean, that's the thing about marketing is like every day is different. And that when you get up every day, it's just like, ooh, what's going to happen today? And that's what I would tell my students. I mean, like, it's just like, you got to love what you do. I mean, that's why I made the transition from being a technical person to a marketer and using marketing research. And again, you think, when you're back in school and everything, it's like, oh, it all follows that structure and that path every time. And what you learn in business is that no, it doesn't. I mean, you could go down a different pathway every day. I mean, because that's life and that's what happens in the real world, and especially in business to business applications because the timelines are shorter than CPG, and you have to be flexible and able to adapt or you're going to be left behind. So that's what I've found in all my years of working. And again, you have the book stuff and then you have real world, and you got to mesh the two together and make it work.
What makes the timelines so much more like what's so much faster in like selling to a restaurant, for example? Like what I feel like I think I might know the answer, but I'm curious.
Yeah, so I mean, we call that like in our industry like customer time. So you're on customer time and you got to listen to them, and they don't care. They're like, yeah, okay, we hear you on this, but we need it for this date because this is the day that our CEO president wants to launch this new product. And we're kind of like, oh, we're up against the wall here. So how can you help us out? So you have that aspect of it where you're not dictating the terms. You're kind of like going with what their timeline is, and you're like, going, how can we help out this customer with their need? And it's a classic problem solving and trying to figure out like, okay, here's a stage gate process, and here's technically what you're supposed to be doing. Okay, how can we like use Tom and try to do stuff, and then in our world, it's imperfect data to begin with. We were talking before, we don't have the scan data that the CPG world has. So again, it's using stuff and being able to pull bits and pieces from different areas and then to apply it. And you might have 60% of the data and then to make a decision and move on. And yeah, and you have to be able to live with that in an imperfect world. And some people can and some people can't.
Well, I think anybody in CPG should do a stint in B2B because it'll teach you how to remember to that, it's nothing is perfect. No
Yep.
data is predictable, is perfectly
No.
predictive. And you have to not forget your own damn instincts because they're
Yeah.
earned. I mean, like, especially if you're close to your customer and you sort of know, or your product, like yeah, you can get blinders, but you can also remember that most of the evidence you need is just by like sitting back and thinking about yourself as a consumer sometimes. I mean, I had another guy in the show where he talked about an idea he came up with during COVID, and the way he came up with it was like, well, I'll just decide what my frustrations are. And it was like this moment we both like, oh yeah, like maybe we, in my role of marketing research, we want to like hurry up and go interview consumers all the time. It's like, well, what do you think? It's just there's almost so much data in the consumer side, the direct to consumer world, and big companies with big budgets do a lot of research. They come to me, they're often swimming in data, but still sitting there in indecision. I'm like, well, gosh, you've got all this information, so hunches, right? Like that's,
Yeah, and at big companies, as you know, I mean, you have, bureaucracy, and then you'll have, like, analysis paralysis where people have all that data, but they just don't know what to do, or they're scared because they're
yeah,
afraid, like, if I make the wrong decision, I could lose my job eventually or something like that, like the old adage went, like, like in IT land, it was like, they would just buy IBMs back in the day, way back in the day, of like, because it was very conservative, and you're not going to get fired for buying that, like, oh well,
yeah.
why wouldn't you buy the upstart one that has all the bells and whistles, because you know what, I want to keep my job. So with data, I found at big companies that I worked for that sometimes, people would almost hide behind the data because they were like scared of making a decision that, that seemed logical and the right thing, but then they would say, "Oh, but look at the data," and look, they would be like, "Well, is that really what the data is telling you?" And
Hey,
that type
career
of
fear is
thing.
a real thing, though. I
Yeah,
mean, like I
it really
totally get
is.
it. I mean,
It really is.
and
And
not
then
every project, I guess, deserves, that some people, like in these corporate roles, they have so many different people coming at them for help and guidance when it comes to like the data itself. Sometimes you just go with what do they want to hear? And then I'm going to go on to the next thing where maybe I can have an impact. I don't blame
that's
people
right.
sometimes, but it's
That's
hard
right.
being the person they're hiring to help inform a decision. If I'm just giving them data, I'm not informing a decision. I'm just giving them data. It's not as fun.
No, no, it really isn't. It
I
really
mean,
isn't. So,
we would all have like a big meeting, right? Like what? So tell me, typically I start with a question. It's kind of, we've been talking it already, but just thinking about your career, whether it's a king and prince now, or I think you mentioned a time back at when you're at Pure Foods, but whatever comes to mind, is there a time in your journey when you can think about when you had a pull, like your instincts, or you had a hunch about something and you either went with it or maybe you ignored it? And then how did it work out? Do you have something you could share that comes to mind?
oh yeah, I mean, I had one when I first started back in marketing, like this was 25 years ago, and it was at Pierre Foods, which was in Cincinnati, Ohio
See,
at
yeah.
the time. And I just moved over from being an engineer at Avon Products up there in Springdale, Ohio. And I was kind of like new. I just got my MBA at Xavier, and we were coming out with a new product. And back then, supersizing was in. It was just like, McDonald's was doing it. Everybody was. I mean, probably wasn't healthy for you, but
Yeah.
that's what the consumers were trending towards. So we were coming out with a supersized burger, and I was just like, oh, fantastic. From a health nutrition standpoint, it had like, 100% or 110% of your fat and your calories, and your sodium level was probably like 200%. Who knew? Like, but
110% of your
I
calories were in that for.
well,
Gee.
it was, it was good
Yeah.
economical like value. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so we're trying to come up with a name for it, like, because and the R&D person put it out on a plate and put it out in the room, and you had, it was classic brainstorming. So you had everybody in there. You had sales, marketing,
Yeah.
uh, anybody, no
Yeah.
idea was bad. So you walked around the room, everybody was saying, come up with a name for it. People were coming up with names like Battleship and Spare Tire and all this. So
What?
one
Spare tire.
spare tire, who knew? And then one of the one of the salespeople says, "That's a big ass burger," and I was sitting there going, you write it down, and you're like, because you're not, in brainstorming, no idea is bad, so you write it up
Oh,
there, and it's
yeah.
like, you're like, okay, we're not going to use that ever. But then you start to like go around, everybody's out of ideas, brainstorming, and then you go back and people are voting, and yeah, you eliminate some, spare tire did get
Yep.
eliminated, I'm sorry to say. But then the big ass kept going, like
Big ass.
I
Right.
was like, huh? And in most companies that I've worked for since then, that would have been a non-starter because they're just too conservative, because they didn't want the controversy,
Yeah.
because the data said that, because even because so again, we couldn't call it what you think. I mean, but call it AZ. That's what we changed it to because I was just like, we can't call it what we wrote down and what the salesperson was saying because I was just like, that's this we can't do that because that'd be offensive and too controversial. But AZ, then you could trademark it because it's like wow, and then you could get away with saying it's the big Arizona burger. You could get away with saying it's the big A to Z burger. So it's like it has everything in it, like an
Okay.
alphabet.
I went to everything in it. As soon as you said
Yeah.
AZ, I was trying to think, okay,
And,
like everything's in it.
and
Yeah.
because I was worried about getting those letters from the little old lady in Tennessee that was very conservative saying, I can't believe that you guys came out with this. But then our target audience was the 18 to 34-year-old male that affectionately we call Bubba, and that would eat at a vending machine or go to a convenience store. These are the people that were our bread and butter at Pierre Foods, and they would get it. It would be like, oh, this is like a challenge, ha ha ha. Like I get the humor, all that kind of stuff. So that was the thing where we got it. It won product of the year that year, like for vending, which I mean, like who knew like they even had such an award back then. I was like, woohoo, like as a marketer. But it was sticking your neck out there. And fortunately we had an owner who was kind of a maverick and said, yeah, let's go with it. And it went from there. And I'm shocked to see, like when I went at King and Prince Seafood to the convenience store show, Nax in Vegas, and there I see Tyson and Big AZ is on the same
Oh,
level as Hillshire Farm, as Tyson, as Ballpark Franks, as Jimmy Dean. It's on the same level. And then I went and talked to some people because I still know some people over there, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Mike, that's selling like 40 million a year. Like it's a great brand for us." And I was just like, who knew? Like back then that
oh, but doesn't that
so
feel good? I mean,
oh,
it's,
as a
I mean,
marketer,
like, it's
as a
like, I call it the
marketer,
look back, it doesn't matter
yeah,
if,
they're like your
you know,
kids, and you always want to see your kids do well. It's like
exactly.
your brands that you come up with, and I couldn't believe that it was on the same level, like in a trade show booth as all those major brands that were around for years. And it's just a food away from home brand. It's really not. It's kind of a quasi retail brand with convenience store and vending. But it was like, but if we had listened to, you know, the data, the research showed that we shouldn't do it. I mean, because it was just way too controversial, and we went with our gut feeling, and the CEO, like I said, was a maverick. Like, yeah, go ahead and do it, like because I was
Oh
just like,
man,
what?
that's
I was like,
great.
we're gonna get some. Luckily, there wasn't social media back then where we would be like, like we might have been booed off the stage, but luckily, like you could bring it out, and you just like made it channel specific, and again, the target audience got it. So, and they bought it, and they bought a heck of a lot of it, and they made it, what it is today. So strong brand, and it continues out there. But that's one of those things where you gotta have some nerve and some guts sometimes, and you gotta, like I said, not look at the data because the data was clearly pointing in another direction. At least maybe we did the wrong demographic for that. But I remember looking at the data, going, my goodness, this could be a disaster bringing this out, and it could be
Just
very
because, why, and why is that?
controversial.
Like, why? Because there's not everybody, would
Not everybody's going to get that sense of
lean.
humor, and
Yeah, okay.
again, also the health reasons for it, because like I said, looking back at it now 25 years later, it wasn't the healthiest of items to bring out. But that was the trend back then, and but looking back now, it's like, oh, so
Yeah, I
interesting.
mean, gosh, gosh, speaking my love language here, just from so much experience watching safe, mediocre themes and positioning just
Oh yeah.
not do well. I mean, like the more polarizing, usually the better, not always, but it's from a catching attention standpoint. Like boring
I-
does not catch attention for
Absolutely,
a burger. This is
absolutely.
not an innovative product. So unless you have an earth-shattering, rare, less than 1% of all ideas ever tested by any company on earth are breakthrough, are truly game changers, are truly, something in their own kind of right could get people to do something different. Like, right. So those aside, All you have is getting someone's attention.
We just had to come up, with a name because, like I said, there's nothing special about that burger. It was just a bigger burger than the normal size burger. It was just like, so it was like a super sized burger. So it was just like, what do you call that? So again, classic brainstorming, and then just not being afraid to go with like an idea that's out there, and then trying to make it that you can own it, like you can have a unique selling proposition, a USP for it, because you have the brand, and then that could take it to the promised land. So if you do that, I mean, that sounds kind of interesting or different, but I mean, there was no USP for the product itself. You
Mm.
hit the nail on the head. It was just like, I mean, it wasn't the best burger in the world because we had to hit a price point. And it was it was good, but it was not like, oh wow, that's the best burger that I've ever had. There were better burgers that Pierre made. So, and but this was their number one seller years later, as I
Well,
found
and
out. Like,
that's amazing. And the
it
name,
is
what I love
amazing.
about it, it's like
It is
clear and
amazing.
creative. I am a big fan of the, story brand framework where like Donald Miller wrote the book Building a Story Brand. It's all about like being very clear or else you're
Mhm.
gonna lose, but like if you can't, it's that you being too creative or too metaphorical, you sort of lose the ability to catch attention. But if you can convey something really intuitive right away, and like you said, like Bubba, you're the ideal person. Your bread and butter was this person who wants the big stuff, right? Like, so it's like this big thing stuffed with everything, and look at the value you're getting is immediately what they perceive. Like, you can't worry about the health nuts who probably aren't going to eat a burger or a big burger anyway, right? Like, so
Yeah, I mean, some of my favorite focus groups in Cincinnati were like they would come in, and you're behind the glass and you
oh
would
yeah,
lunch, and they would like talk about their favorite places to go for vending food in Cincinnati, and I was just like, they were like aficionados of like where to go. I was just like, oh my gosh, and like basically like when I went to work for Sarah Lee, we'd still use the same focus group moderator, and she was awesome. She was the best. And I remember one of the folks was like, yeah, like it was almost like they knew Jimmy Dean personally. Like, yeah, Jimmy Dean wouldn't hurt me. Like like, like they're a real like Jimmy Dean was a real person back in the day, a singer, but then it was kind of like Jimmy Dean was still alive instead of the company, and Jimmy Dean wouldn't hurt me. I was just like, oh my
they
goodness.
say there's no such thing as brand loyalty,
They're,
but like,
they're
sometimes
really
like there's like some people that are really
I've seen
they
it.
think
I've
they
seen it
know this
before.
brand
Yeah.
personally.
I'm I'm glad that the glass was pretty thick in the focus group thing, because I think there was plenty of times I was laughing, and hopefully not too hard, because what they said was just so instinctual and real, and it's just like, wow, you got total insights on what they're thinking, and because again,
Oh
that's
my gosh. I'm cracking
even
up.
even though
Jimmy Dean
I
wouldn't
love
hurt
that food.
me.
Yeah, like
What?
Jimmy Dean wouldn't hurt me. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was one of the quotes from back in the days.
You probably use that, I bet, since, right?
Yeah, I mean, but not in a while, but I think I probably will in the next
You
day
got
or
to
two.
bring it
My,
back
my
out.
people, my people will be looking at me like, who's Jimmy Dean, and what's Jimmy Dean have to do with this? So,
But there's so much in that, right? Like Mike, I will credit you with the quote. I'm going to use it. Gosh, the focus groups, I mean, they get a lot of bad rap. I'm from me sometimes as well, because I think we abuse them and try to make them, more than what they are. But what I love is there is nothing like hearing the actual words
yep,
that someone that comes out of someone's mouth, no matter what they are, right? Like even when we do surveys, we we only get natural reactions, and it's like, yeah, they're not there with you in person, but like the work, how they say, how much they say it, and sometimes the like weird stuff they say, like what instinctually is behind that is the story, not always exactly what they said, right? Like I think it's so powerful. Like there's nothing like hearing it live and real, and raw for
oh
like
yeah.
giving you an idea, you know?
I mean, that's what I love about focus groups. But then like when I teach the class, I mean, it's just like, oh, well, you shouldn't use the focus group, because it's this qualitative data and it's directional in nature and all that. And I'm just like, but you could use it, and then you could expand on that. And but again, people are like, well, we don't have time to do all that stuff
Oh,
anymore. And I mean, I'm just like, but sometimes you have to do that so that you don't even know the direction sometimes. So you use those. I mean, I use them for that type of thing just to kind of like give us a direction of what where to sail and what to look at. Because then we're like, oh, I didn't know that was such an area, and that's something that's always interesting. Focus groups.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, we do a lot of one-on-one interviews because trying to get that immediate. We like want to get an immediate one for when we've got an idea or something we
Mhm.
want to put in front of somebody. And where they go on their own, no matter
Mhm.
where they go, and I don't care if it's one person, can be make or break for what your decision is. I mean, because you have the instincts already honed from what you know from the category, what you know about consumer behavior. I worked way back in healthcare when I like fell into marketing research. I was managing a program for an insurance company, and we had to study whether or not our initiatives. We were trying to get doctors and patients to change their behavior. We had to study if what we were doing worked, and I was hacking my way through it. But I was doing like outcomes research, and anyway, we hired an epidemiologist to come in and help evaluate our programs and tell us if they were good. And it was super enlightening. I mean, here's a guy who like they have mass quantities of data. They're looking for
Mhm.
relationships and mass quantities of data. Like they are not qualitative versus quantitative like we frame it in marketing research. Nonetheless, I will never get him telling me, and I have a whole diatribe about how like what he showed me. Well, this is good, but and what I learned from him. But the one thing I'll never forget him saying is like, Terry, because he was kind of making a point, and I'm like, yeah, and I made a point, like, that was just that one person, and one doctor said that, and he said, "Never forget the power of N equals 1." And so, like, his name was Tom Wilson. I still, like, quote him for years because it's like we wanna just say, "Oh, put that over here for something that feels more reliable," and then what we're doing is we're putting our damn instincts on the back burner because we're leaning into safe or something feels like it might be controversial or it might not be trustworthy. I'm like, well, but one person's reaction can be a make or break. So like, don't dismiss you decide if it's a one-off or not. Not more
Yeah,
data decides that, right? Like, come on.
absolutely.
If somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can reach you?
I mean, go to the LinkedIn page. So it's going to be Michael Tigani, and then it's right there on LinkedIn. So just pop it in and definitely reach out to me, for ideas or just to talk or connect. I mean, always open to stuff and
Yeah.
want to be a guest speaker in my class, please do.
I was about to say, right? Like, who wants to speak in Mike's class? It sounds so fun. All right, for everybody listening, thank you so much for being here. The show is brought to you by the Vibe Method. We help you nail a unique customer story and the vibe for your product or marketing idea before you go live. To find out more about that, go to gohunch.com. And always remember, until next time, the worst thing you can do with a hunch is ignore it.